shows up to school in a Jaguar. People are like,
Is it like a,
those ornaments.
is it like a sedan one, like the legit Jag?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a legit.
Does he have a fur coat to go with?
No, but it is a legit Jag with all like the wood inlay.
Oh,
yes,
that's amazing.
I bet the car seat won't fit in there.
No, no. But my
I do too.
Oh, yeah.
I like the Jag SUV. I almost bought that. I like that a lot, but then I like this one.
I'm gonna hold out.
Ready? Right when I turn my mic on. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Thursday, August 25th, 2022 Peninsula School District Board of Directors Business Meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
It's been moved by David and seconded by Chuck that we approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. The agenda is approved. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda prior to the vote? Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second again.
Moved by Jennifer, seconded by Chuck to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. And for our first report, we have a summer school review, and Melissa Wisner is going to present for us. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Barr. Is that better? Okay, I think it's on. Okay. So, Summer Learning 2022, I'm going to go through the slides quickly, but you'll have access to them, so feel free to go dig in. There's a lot of data there. And if you have questions, feel free to email me, call me, and let me know if you would like any more information. So, I will tell you that this year in summer school, not surprisingly, we had more students engaged in summer school than we had before, and at a greater success rate. So, really pleased about that. 3 programs for our elementary students, and we serve 437 students. Secondary students, 6 programs, and we serve 352. And the reason you see so many there in elementary school is this reason right here. This is Jumpstart Kindergarten. And you'll see some great examples of what Jumpstart Kindergarten is designed for. So you see them lining up and practicing. You see that nice straight line. The guy, little boy in the front, he's got bubbles in his mouth, I'm assuming, right, Lisa Ray? So that's how we help them remember to be quiet when they're walking in the hallway. The picture to the top right corner, you see a bunch of students working together. Some really interesting engineering design going on there as they are building the tracks and working together and building out the Legos or the blocks on the side. Right below that, you see them sitting crisscross applesauce. For secondary folks who don't know what that is, that's how we teach kids to sit and listening to their teacher, watching and engaging in that work. And then the last picture on the bottom left, you get a close-up of the 2 students there who I think spent some time, because I saw quite a few pictures of it, and they were building and they were discussing and what goes where. So this is really what that Jumpstart Kindergarten experience is designed for, to teach them what school routines and procedures to expect, how we act on the carpet, and how we work together. So I thought that was a good example. Another program that we have is Extended School Year. In Extended School Year, we had 33 elementary students, 22 secondary students, those grades K-12, and that's additional support that's based on a student's individual education plan. 2 elementary programs that we saw besides Jumpstart Kinder. The Summer Soar and Boost, it's the same thing, but Evergreen wanted to be the Eagles. You know, they're the Eagles and they wanted to soar, so great. And we had 141 students total. That's in grades 3 through 5, with a total of 12 staff and 6 paraeducators. You see that it went for the month of July, and the things we focused on were STEM scopes, which you'll remember is the new science or STEM adoption that we had at the elementary school, reading and math intervention, and also just to build their confidence and to fill in gaps. And it's a partnership that we have with the communities and schools and our Boys and Girls Club. So there's academics in the morning, and then the students have the opportunity to be able to stay for the rest of the day. And this year, 92 students, or 65% of our students stayed and took advantage of that opportunity with our partners. There's the data on the kindergarten jumpstart that we saw pictures of. It was all elementary schools, 4 days, right? So it's fast, it's intensive, and it's a great opportunity for students and for parents to be ready for that first day of school when it comes. And again, they get to practice what it means to be a student. So some of our secondary programs, we have credit retrieval and acceleration. That's for grades 8 through 12. And those are the programs that we have. The Internet Academy, West Sound Tech, Summer Learning Camp at PHS, and a new program I'm going to spend a little more time on because other programs we've done in the past, and that's our 50 for 50. And while we're looking at that, I'd also like to recognize that Mandy Swainston is here, and Mandy was our summer school administrator and did a fabulous job. So everything was left in very capable hands and ran very smoothly. So it's for all rising 9th through 12th graders. There is a class specifically for freshmen, which is basically Jumpstart Freshmen. And they get an opportunity. They work through some different strategies. This year they worked through some of the Avid Wicker strategies, organization, just to see this is what it's like to be a freshman here on the campus. 10 teachers with a special ed teacher there to provide additional support to students. You see the list of academics in that freshman seminar. The last one on the list is the one I just spoke of. This has been consistent. This is the same classes that we had last year. And you can imagine that's where we're really focusing on credit recovery. And then, like last year, we had a camp, and that was very, very popular. We had a lot of great feedback from kids and from teachers. I remember hearing kids say, why can't regular school be like this? And, you know, we really like this. And it was not so much that they got to do the camp, but they really liked the 2 hours with a subject. They really thought that was helpful to them. Smaller groups, right? And more focused work in terms of looking at the standards that they needed to recover. So you see the opportunities they had for the afternoon, 2 hours for academics, and then 2 hours in a choice activity. This one was a new one for last year, and the Learning Lab. Students could say, I want to go in and work on some online credit recovery, or I'm missing some assignments and I want some extra help from the morning. And we had several students take advantage of that, especially, I think it was an Algebra 1, Mandy, if I'm remembering. So you see students are willing to take advantage of this support. And we heard that over and over again, not just from the students, but from the teachers as well. Our new program, 50 for 50, and that is, our goal was to get 50 students, mostly freshmen, to earn and to recover 50 credits, right? So that ran for 4 days. So the day after school was over, back they were, teachers and students, and they were there for 4 days total. So very, very intensive, very focused. And we focused on students, targeted students who were in that 50 or that 45 to 59 percentile. So they were close. They were close to passing the class with a D. We focused on them, figured out what they needed, very short-term specific standards, and teachers really drilled down to that. And as soon as they recovered the credit, they passed the assessment, they were done. We had students that came one day, and then at the end of the second day had completed the work they needed to do in order to pass the class. So that was, and I think by the end, there were not that many left because they had successfully completed the assessments, done the work they needed to do, and receive the credit. And those courses, those are the courses that you see that they had an opportunity to participate in. something that we've had every year, and I couldn't tell you how many years, but Erin O'Neill is here, and she is in charge of this program, and she could tell us. But West Sound Tech, the summer satellite, this program typically has high attendance rate and high pass rate. So you see the numbers of the courses that they were able to be engaged in. And I would say I was glad to see ASL. We have, last year, I haven't checked the courses this year. Last year we had 5 sections of ASL at each high school and still waiting lists. It is, I think, the most highly demanded class that I've seen. American Sign Language. And then they also had the opportunity to participate in field trips and have guest speakers come in. So again, one of the goals of the strategic plan is to engage in the community and have the community come in and engage with us. Sure.
How long does that last?
I'll defer to Erin.
14 days. It lasts 90 hours, the same as half a credit throughout the school year. The longer days allow the field trips and guest speakers and to dive in deep.
And do they travel, Erin?
Uh,
No, it was at PHS, right?
Oh, right. We provide transportation, and it was located at PHS this year. Historically, it's been at Gig Harbor, but in order to maximize our resources, we kept it the same place that the second summer school was.
Yeah, so that was something that we had not done in the past. We'd spread the programs out a bit, but this year we were all at PHS, with the exception of the 50 for 50. Gig Harbor had theirs at their own site. Another program that our secondary students have access to, and this has been going on for some years, is the Peninsula Internet Academy, PIA. There were more students engaged in this year, and we had a higher pass rate of 90%. It was 86, I believe, last year. So that is a program that's growing. Has a couple different components. The first is that there were 184 courses that are PSD courses that are taught by PSD teachers, and students have access to that. Then they also have, students have an opportunity to participate, if they wish, in an online asynchronous course. And again, electives and core graduation courses, apparently I did not finish that line, are what's offered. Thank you. And I have a video from 3 of our credit recovery teachers who actually were all teaching ELA. So rather than have ELA 9, ELA 10, ELA 11, they just combined together and they worked with a group of students and they spoke, and I'll attach that video so that you can listen to them about how they did, what they did. And when I took the video, what I heard loud and clear was relationships are number 1, making that relationship with kids, and number 2, the immediacy of feedback. So we talked about how do we scale that up when you don't have 15 or 16 kids in your class, when you have more, right? And you have multiple preps, or multiple courses. So really looking at that. Summer school is the kids like it. They're learning, obviously. They're recovering credit. So the question is, how can we examine the concepts and the things that we do in summer school and incorporate that into the regular school year when possible? Any questions? Mm-hmm.
So that was at 2 schools, so it was actually 100.
Right.
And
Well,
there were a lot of seniors.
seniors, well, yeah, they could be in there, but it was, no, 50 for 50 was really geared for freshmen, right? Because we know the research and the data on our freshmen who aren't successful that first year. Because they're in a hole, right, and they never get out. There could have been a senior or 2 in there, but it was geared for, and I think I saw a few sophomores, because I saw chemistry, and I might have seen a algebra 2 or a geometry class. In the 50 for 50, let me look at what my screen says. Not everybody, there were 85 students who attended 50 for 50 between the 2. 80 regained their elective, or their credit. So 5, for some reasons, I think there was a number, they were sick and they couldn't continue, but it was 4 days. 4 days, so it was really quick.
Want to make sure there's follow-up on the ones that didn't drive.
Absolutely, that's a great point, yes. Yes, counselors were engaged in helping recruit kids for that, so I'm sure that they'll be following up with those kids as sophomores or whatever group they're in.
Yeah, for the 50 for 50, this was the first year,
This was our first year.
and it was all subjects, or, sorry,
It went fast, I know. It really was focusing on those core content areas of algebra, biology. I think there may have been some world history in there.
so was it broken up by subject and rooms, or was it kind of the students working independently with instructors floating, or what did
Yeah.
what did it kind of look like?
Mandy, do you have a good idea of what that looked like? And
I wasn't there, but my understanding was that teachers that had students that were close to that would provide the materials, like, they could do this assignment with this test or
Yeah.
finish this project, and so it was more.
Dan, do you want to fill in the blanks?
Yeah, we stipended a teacher from each core subject area, and the teachers within their department would communicate what standards the students were short on. And so I walked into the math classroom at Gig Harbor on day one, and the teacher in there had students in this corner working on algebra, maybe a few on geometry. They're not even working necessarily on the same units, because their needs and where they were deficient were on different standards. But one teacher per subject area facilitated all the work, and there was a fairly easy to read checklist of where they fell short that teacher went by, and yeah. And by the way, the ones that did not recover the credit was generally they didn't show for those 4 days. So those that came really were productive, and it was very helpful.
See so many students participating, and that we have such a large number of our teachers that are helping with that, so I'm really happy to see that. I know when I was a kid, summer school I didn't have to attend it, but probably should have, but it was frowned upon, like, it was like derogatory when I was a kid, so I'm glad to see that our kids are taking that to make up their credit, so.
Great, thank you. What I appreciate too about what the district offers is its credit retrieval. That's the biggest focus, right? Because we don't want them to fail, and to build their confidence and have the skills they need moving forward in that area. But also there are opportunities, and that's what the part of the Peninsula Internet Academy is, that they can gain like elective courses, so they can get ahead. So what it does is it opens up a schedule for students who may want to, like if you're in band, right, or choir or some other, or art, and you want to be able to do that, but you don't have enough hours in the day to do it, so that helps. So it's both ends.
I also have a question about the 50 for 50 program. It's a really simple question. Why does that work so well? Is it simply, as opposed to, these are kids that, as I understand it, we're not turning things in or not, flourishing for whatever reason during the year. Is it simply because it's smaller? Is it the pressure of now or, you got it or never, or, you know what I mean? Do you have an opinion on that? Why is it so successful for them?
I think actually it's both of those. I think it's a smaller group. We know they do really well. They like the smaller group, right? And there's more teacher attention, and because, as Dan explained, there was no question exactly what needed to be done, because they were this close, right? It's like, I just have this little piece I need to get over, and it could have been that as soon as they were finished, they didn't have to come back. So I think, like I said, we had a number of students who finished that second day. So the question is, how do we take that learning and that understanding and, what does that mean in the course of the year? So we don't have to have them come and do that little bit of work, that we can capture that credit during the school year.
Yeah, I love that piece, especially like things that were really successful. Why not integrate those all the time? And then this has probably been explained before, but how are those students identified? And are they identified by the teachers in those core subjects, and how is that communicated to the families? How does the program come together, if you don't mind explaining?
Sure. Dan, do you have more? I'm going to say, I'm assuming it's that the teachers and the counselors work together and contact families and say, or maybe families, could say, hey, what do I don't want you going in, losing a credit when you're this close.
Right.
might say, hey, I've got 3 kids that are really close, and here's the standards, and Chuck might say, hey, I'm the one that's gonna come in for those 4 days, and so we did ask departments to identify the students that were close, to also each individual teacher within that department identify which standards were needed to be addressed, and then the teacher who was the one who stepped forward to do the work had all the information they needed. You did mention parent outreach. Another successful component of that is when you get a call as a parent and say, hey, your kid could come in for 4 days and earn this credit as opposed to either doing summer school or leaving with half. That is a motivational piece, and it's nice to have parents on board. So that was a big part of it as well.
No, that's great. Thank you.
I also would like to recognize Lisa Ray, who was in charge of Jumpstart Kindergarten. I was able to get into a number of schools, and you could not tell that they had been there for 2 days. It's like they had been, and it was like March or April, and parents were really pleased. It was really well done, Lisa. So thanks for all your work on that.
Thanks.
Yes, please.
So I'm always concerned about the seniors in the graduations. Was this an opportunity for some of the ones that were struggling to graduate also to catch some of those credits?
They could do credit recovery through PIA. That would be one way. Dan, you probably have more.
Yeah, at the program that Mandy ran at PHS, there was also opportunities for seniors there.
Right. Right.
For current juniors going into their senior year as well.
Okay.
After graduation,
So, okay. So it's after graduation, so they wouldn't be able to?
perfectly was after the last day of school for the freshman students, since seniors are done prior to that.
Okay. Yeah. So I apologize. I didn't read my emails this afternoon. I emailed you this morning about what I saw was each of the high schools lost about 50 seniors towards the end of the school year in those last 3 months. And so I was really concerned about that when I saw that in the enrollment listings.
Want me to read you the reply?
Okay, so there was.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead. I did send it out to the entire board
Okay.
on behalf of your question.
Uh-huh.
I just don't have it in front of me right this moment.
Okay.
Just see if I can find it.
Yeah. So I didn't get back to my emails this afternoon. I'm sorry.
Chuck, why don't we just put that
Okay.
on pause, and then
Okay.
I will answer the question after
Okay.
the next
Okay.
information.
Any other questions? Feel free to contact me if you think of anything or want to know anything more about the programs. And thank you for your support of all our students and for listening to the presentation.
Thank you, Melissa and Mandy, for being here. All right. We now have comments from the community, and we have just one speaker tonight, Sarah Garriott. So if you want to make your way to the podium, since you are a regular addresser of the board, I'm not going to give you all the directions. You know the way it goes. So
All right.
3 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sarah Garriott, for the record. I wanted to start my comments this evening by sincerely thanking all of the teachers and administrators who are busy preparing for our children's return to their classes next week. We so appreciate you. Now, quoting from the Heritage Foundation, the Department of Education is proposing a new rule that will put women's safety and privacy at risk and deprive women of athletic and professional opportunities. It would do so by radically rewriting Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972. Title IX prohibits discrimination based on sex in any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. It is enforced by the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. For 50 years, Title IX has been enforced using the self-evident definition of sex, a person's status as male or female based on immutable biological traits. The new rule, proposed by the Department of Education, will redefine sex as used in Title IX to include sex stereotypes, sex-related characteristics, including intersex traits, pregnancy or related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity. End quote. The consequences of such a rule change would be monumental. Notably, any federal funding to our state and district would be again tied to complying with these radical and harmful changes to Title IX. Public comment regarding these changes are being accepted by the Department of Education until September 12th. I am urging this district to please send a formal statement against these changes and ask you to request the same of districts across the state. Please use your influence to protect our girls and their future opportunities. Next topic. A retired police officer, certified in defensive training with a master's in forensic psychology, recently noted an alarming uptick in sexual abuse happening in schools across the nation. He said about 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys in the United States experience child abuse by age 18, according to the CDC. 1 in 10 will experience school employee sexual misconduct before high school. One teacher offender can have as many as 73 victims. He recommends that schools ban all sex ed in K through 4, designate traveling sex ed instructors who are trained and vetted. No one teaching sex ed should have day-to-day contact to build their trust with children. And of course, I must add, create policy putting boundaries around sex ed so that it cannot be integrated. If there is one thing that should bring us together, it should be protecting our children. Finally, the NEA labeled those of us speaking at board meetings domestic terrorists this last year, and we now know it was they who were largely responsible for keeping our schools shut down. There's an organization called For Kids and Country for teachers wishing to exit their state and national unions in all 50 states. The site provides concrete, alternative, positive resources. I am here to strongly encourage all of our teachers to defund the state and national unions by exiting them en masse while keeping their local association. The WEA and NEA have not been on the side of parents, have become increasingly politicized, using funds to promote political agendas instead of the academic well-being of our children. We can do better. Please exit the state and national unions. Again, that's for kidsandcountry.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, no old business tonight. So for new business, we have a budget presentation by Ashley Murphy and Karen Anderson.
Is the clicker here? Got it. Okay. Ready?
Ready. Are you guys ready?
You're ready.
Okay.
Because we presented budget last week, there are no significant changes. Well, there are no changes to what we presented. So we're going to go through the first few slides quickly. There are some things that we need to address tonight. Ashley will probably do most of that. But if there are questions, please stop us because we're going to be racing through this as quickly as we can.
We're recapping old information only.
We're going to start with the general fund. Again, our enrollment projections for next year, 8,855. No changes there. Picture what's happened over time. These are only the kids that are in our classrooms. It does not include alternative learning and Running Start. Our revenue budget for next year is $148 million. We have our levy collections that will come in a little over $25 million. And we have a levy spending plan that matches the revenues that are coming in. So this is, you will be adopting the levy spending plan that goes on the budget resolution. And so this will be on the budget resolution that you adopt tonight.
These are the same categories as prior years. It's just the percentage allocated in the categories. Those are the only things that have changed.
Our expenditure plan for next year is $153 million. No changes there from last week.
And that's what the budget is adopted off of. So in the resolution, that would be the budgeted expenditure plan for this coming school year.
We are required to do what is called an MSOC, which is Material Supplies Operating Costs Disclosure. So we receive funding for MSOC. We get an MSOC allocation. And we have to basically show that we are spending at least that amount. We typically are spending more. And so we have to report what categories we're spending the dollars and what we've got budgeted. So you can see that we're receiving a little over $11 million for MSOC allocation. And we are spending or we have budgeted $16.7 million. So we do exceed it by $5 million. So we do meet this requirement, and so there are no issues with that. Again, the general ed summary, we are projecting that our ending fund balance for next year will be a little over $8 million.
Okay, so this is where we start looking at our 4-year forecast, 4 years being this upcoming school year plus 3 additional years. This was a newer requirement for school districts over the last few years that we end up having to do this 4-year trend and then forecast out and report to the board and the state. What I will say about this is obviously we don't necessarily know what is even going to happen during this legislative session. So when we're trying to trend out 2, 3, 4 years, it becomes a tad bit difficult. So we do our best educated guess and trend based upon that. So you're looking at what do we think our enrollment's going to do, because we know our enrollment drives our revenue. What do we think our staffing's going to do? What do we think our local revenues will do as far as our actual levy? And then what will our state and federal dollars brought in be based upon what our enrollment is actually looking like? So this is a more detailed look at what we're anticipating. You can see that after this coming year, this school year, we will not have those federal ESSER dollars. So we did keep about $745,000 that will be offsetting the last of our what would be considered sort of our COVID costs in this coming school year. But after that, it's gone. Our regular education, so this is where the majority of our salaries and benefits for non-CTE, non-SPED instruction lies. You will see that it does incrementally increase over the years, but that's because we do anticipate that our enrollment would increase. Now, we were conservative when it came to our overall percentage for enrollment increase, just because it's really hard to know right now what it's going to look like. When you talk with demographers, they are saying that the birth rates are down, right? So we don't have as many incoming kindergartners, and we won't over these next 4 years. And so that drives your overall increase in your percentage lower because your graduating senior class is going to be larger than your incoming kindergarten class. So, but we do anticipate the area growing. We know that there's new in development, so we know that we will be bringing in new students. So we do anticipate an increase. That increase also, we know that we're going to get IPD because contractually, you know, the state it will give us that. Special education, we know that our both our costs and our revenues will increase appropriately in those areas, not to fully fund our needs for special education. Like during the last presentation, we're about $5 million underfunded right now for special education. But we do anticipate that we will see slight increases there. Same thing with our CTE programs. We do anticipate receiving an increased allocation there with increased enrollment in CTE. Our community service programs, our other instructional, again, those incrementally change based upon where our enrollment is and our costs. So our total expenditures we're looking at going from in 22-23 from about $153 million to about $161 million. In 25-26. That also has to take into consideration just inflationary factors of what it costs, utilities and such over the years.
What I would also add is that as soon as you adopt this plan, things can change. So it's not hard and fast. There's
Yeah.
always changes. It's not a plan that's in concrete. You know, things can happen with the economy, things can happen with, you know, pupil, you know, student enrollment increasing, decreasing. So basically, this is just a conservative approach of how we will, how she will start moving forward. The district will start moving forward.
Okay, so when it comes down to sort of our bottom line, we know that we have to have a fund balance, and we know that we have a goal as far as our fund balance percentage. So ultimately, it's almost sort of like backwards planning, right? We know what our goals should be. So what are all of our expenditures within those categories going to end up being in order to get us to our goal? And then you look at how your enrollment's driving that and see where we would need to be. So 22-23, like we've said, we're going to be at about 8.8 million as far as fund balance goes. Now, you'll see that in 23-24, there's a decrease, right? So this coming school year is our last year for some stabilization and hold harmless funding. So we will be losing that funding after this year. That funding is specifically in the local levy area and also in transportation. And so once those funds are gone, they're gone unless the legislature were to do something in order to keep those going. I don't necessarily think they will, so we didn't build it into the plan. So we are anticipating a bit of a downturn coming into this next school year, and then you'll see from there we start to build back up. Again, incrementally and slowly, taking a conservative approach with our enrollment. And again, like Karen said, once this is adopted, it very well, things can change and we could be looking at something completely different. Now, with our approach on trying to bring in new revenues, that could also change what our expenditures are looking like. Because if we bring in more money, you're going to be adding to fund balance, but you're also going to be adding expenditures as well. So again, this is a plan. It's a conservative plan. The only thing I'm fairly certain of is that we will see a decrease next year before we start seeing an increase in year 3 and 4.
I think it's important to note that we can't turn it around in 1 year. There's a lot of decisions that take place. The other thing is that we are in the people business. 80% of our budget is people. It's a little bit more than that now, but that's where we have to massage and we have to move forward. We still have to do the things that we need to do. We still have to educate students. The goal is that we get to the point where our ongoing revenues are supporting our ongoing expenditures. And we're looking at those one-time revenues, or, as we build fund balance, we get to a point where those one-time revenues can be used for one-time things and opportunities. Capital Projects Fund. Again, we're finalizing, pretty much wrapping up the final projects, closing out the 4 elementary school project probably this year, and then finalizing the middle school projects. And so based on this budget, the only thing that we'll have left is the unassigned of a little over $1 million. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. So with this fund, obviously the goal is always to draw it down. Like I said during the last meeting, when you have money in there, it's because you've gone out, you've gotten a bond or a levy to work on specific projects. The goal is to get the work done, be responsive to the taxpayers' needs with those funds, finish out the projects, and then the fund stays with low capacity until your next project or you get your next levy. So that's what we're seeing here. You're not necessarily seeing a huge increase in revenues or a huge increase in our beginning fund balance. Therefore, our estimated ending fund balance sort of stays lower, a tad bit stagnant until the district were to decide to go out for another bond action or a capital projects levy or a tech levy, tech and safety. And that's what would build this fund in the future. But for now, based on our 4-year projection, we'd be looking at this current school year ending at just over $1 million, and then 4 years from now having about $2.2 million in that fund.
The revenues that we would be collecting are impact fees. We do still qualify for impact fees, and that is based on our high school enrollment for unhoused students. Our debt service fund. Again, debt service fund is basically paying off the bond issues that we have, the 2019 and the 2020. We have 16 years left to make payments. And so this is basically, we levy funds, a tax, in order to make the payments. And it's based on those issues and what the debt service payments are.
Okay, same thing with this 4-year forecast. So when we go out for a bond and the community passes that bond action, they're passing the dollar value that would need to be repaid. So unlike a levy in the general fund where it's a dollar value that we're going to be bringing in each year, on the bond side, it's the repayment of those bonds, which changes each year based upon principal and interest. So that's where you're going to end up seeing a variation in these years dependent upon the debt amortization schedule and repayment of such. So the bond payments, they are done based upon a calendar year. So we have a winter payment and then we have a summer payment. And so you're always going to see an ending fund balance in that, because half of that goes towards your payment in the beginning of the school year in December. So we're looking at about a $5.1 million ending fund balance in 22-23, and in 25-26 you can see that increases to 7.6. The longer you go out from your bond, the more you end up paying, and that's when years down the line, likely 10 after your initial issuance, you look at bond refunding if interest rates are lower, and it drops those payment schedules again. So that's what we're looking at for our debt service fund over the next 4 years.
ASB Student Body Fund. Again, very typical of what students have planned in the past. We're not seeing any variations. Again, they're operating up to normal capacities, and and there are no changes at this point, what we presented last week.
So doing a 4-year trend on ASB is almost comical, because this is the adults determining what the kids are going to be doing with the money. So we do our best guess. So according to us, the kids are going to keep the same flow going, okay, post-COVID. We know they're going to be doing fundraisers. We know they're going to want activities. They're going to want prom. They're bringing in money, and then they're going to be spending it. Now, ultimately, the goal is that you bring in money that year and you're spending that money that year on those kids. So that's why you're going to see that estimating fund balance starting to decrease, because you never want to hold a significant ASB ending fund balance, because then the kids raising the money aren't getting to utilize it. So that's why you're seeing that decrease over the next 4 years. But the kids could come together and approve their own ASB budget that is completely different, and maybe they really like the incoming freshman class and want to give them some extra money. All up to them. So this is would be a conservative forecast.
And typical of what we've seen in trends. And the last fund is the Transportation Vehicle Fund. Again, we're introducing this next budget year the possibility of getting some grants. And we have a new transportation director that is very instrumental in and willing to go out and find some opportunities, grant opportunities. Bringing in money to help pay for buses that can then go on the depreciation schedule and bring up our depreciation payment from the state is a win-win. And so that is ultimately the goal. And so we started it out this next budget year. We'll see how it goes, and then we built the trend analysis, the forecast.
So ultimately, when you're looking at this, what we're looking at is just making sure that we have an estimating ending fund balance that's on the conservative end, because that means we're replacing our buses as they fall off the depreciation schedule, again, to make sure that we're continually getting that depreciation, because that's what primarily funds this specific fund. Now, with that said, if there's other grant opportunities out there, I know Dawnette's going to be pursuing them. She is interested in surplusing old buses that are off that depreciation schedule because they don't earn us anything, and then getting in new buses, hopefully with the aid of federal or state dollars, Because like Karen said, it is a win-win. It brings in dollars that technically we didn't actually have to spend, and we're sort of reaping those rewards on two sides. We're driving a bus that we didn't necessarily have to pay for, but then the state's also repaying money through that depreciation that we can utilize to purchase other buses. So again, this is just sort of a conservative estimate of what we could be looking at based upon current depreciation schedule and what we're anticipating to be bringing in for the next 4 years.
So with the budget adoption, we are required to have you hold a public hearing. There is a resolution that you will adopt. Part of that resolution is you are adopting the expenditure budgets or appropriation budgets for each fund for the 22-23 school year. And then along with that, you are adopting the 4-year budget forecasts for each fund. And then at the very end, we have the 22-23 levy spending plan as part of the overall resolution. And as a summary, this is really what you're adopting, is the expenditure appropriations for each fund and the amounts that we have budgeted or proposed to you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing on the 2022-23 budget. This is an opportunity for community members to comment on the budgets as presented by Karen and Ashley. We did invite attendees to fill out a request to make public comment card and indicate the topic, and I do not have any, but I will ask if there are any comments on the 22-23 budget. If yes, please come to the podium. Again, are there any comments on the 22-23 budget? And I need to ask a third time if there's any comments on the 22-23 budget. All right, hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. Is there any discussion on the resolution prior to the vote on the board?
No, I would just like to thank Ashley, being new. I know we had a pretty thorough analysis of this whole budget last week, so I just want to thank you and Karen for the amount of work you did. It's very thorough, as always, and that's really all I wanted to say. I know it's a lot of work, and thank you for all your service on that. Okay. And if you know what, are you going to make a comment? Okay, go ahead.
Just a real quick question. I know we've hashed this out for the last couple of weeks. ASB funds, when COVID hit, did we wind up with money getting carried over in those ASB funds that weren't used? I think prom got cut off and
So statewide, what ended up happening, so that money doesn't go away, right? So the
Right.
kids earn it, and then it just, yes, that's why you're seeing an increase in their ending fund balance, because
okay.
we weren't able to hold those activities and spend the funds as they had previously adopted. Now,
But
was
what
it
I
different
would
here?
say is if any students did pay for something and it didn't happen, they were refunded.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it didn't look like there was a dramatic increase or anything, but the
No.
question came up when you were talking
Yeah,
about
and I
that.
would say the previous year, we had very minimal activity in the ASB fund. It wasn't last year, it was the year before,
Yeah.
where pretty much nothing really happened. We weren't able to have Winterfest or Tide Fest. They, I think they had some virtual proms. So there were, it was really 2020, 2021, too many 20s. That was when students were really not in school.
Yeah.
So, and everything was pretty much virtual.
Okay. And then one more question. Buses. What is the age that they go off the depreciation schedule?
It's different based upon whether or not it's a big bus or a small bus.
Okay.
And there's different components based upon other items within the bus. It's normally quite a bit of time, 10+ years on a
It's
big bus.
13 for
Yeah.
a big bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to say it's 8 for the small
Small bus.
buses.
Okay.
I don't know if that changes if they are propane or electric. Because we don't have any, I don't know if there's a if there's a different depreciation. The other thing that has happened is that has changed. It used to be that there were, it was 15 years, and then they changed the way that they were calculating depreciation. So it has been changing. It hasn't changed recently in the last, I would say, 10 years, but they did play with depreciation. And it is we don't receive depreciation until the very last day of the fiscal year.
For that prior
So-
school year.
Right.
So it became an opposite expenditure. So you brought in your revenue that you're gonna spend the next year. And so it's kind of cattywampus.
But it's beneficial to the state because July starts their new fiscal year.
Right.
So they can
Right.
offset those expenses by a year.
Okay. Thank you.
Chuck, I might make a suggestion to the board that if you wanted our new transportation manager to come at a certain time, we could plug her into the calendar, and then that would be a wonderful opportunity for her to come in front of you and have a conversation about all things transportation. Okay,
That would be
thanks.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution 2203 adopting the 22-23 budget?
I make a motion to approve and adopt 22-23 budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by David, seconded by Jennifer to approve resolution 2203. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion is carried. Resolution 2203 has been approved. Now for item 8.2, budget extension for 2021-22, also presented by Ashley and Karen.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
Thanks.
This is really quick, but as we were building the budget, we also have to look at what's happening in the current year. And as we were looking at what we spent and what we've brought in, there are some significant changes from what we originally planned. To start with, our revenues came in differently. So we received a little over $4.5 million more in revenues than what we had originally planned. And typically, when you build a budget with expenditures, that's really, you're adopting the expenditure plan, and we can't exceed that without doing a budget extension. One of the revenue areas that we received a lot more revenue in was for food service. It was the national, the federal funding for meals. We served all students all meals. Everything was free last year. And the one difference between the previous year, 2021, and 21-22, is that all our students were in school. So we really didn't know how many meals we were going to be serving. And so what really happened is that for even though we were getting more revenue, our contract with Sodexo, we pay Sodexo based on the number of meals that are served. And so because there was a significant increase in the number of meals that were served, our contract for Sodexo also went up. The expense went up. So because we received the more than $2 million for food service, we would like to extend the budget capacity for food service to help support, and also gives us a little bit more cushion in our expenditure budget so that as we close the books, we have decisions to make. Do we charge it to prior year or do we charge it to current year? Or prior year or the new year. And so as we go forward, we're predicting that we're going to come in really close to our expenditure budget. And so we would like to have a little bit more flexibility in being able to make some decisions. Because our 22-23 budget is so tight, and we stripped a lot of the extra capacity out, We want to be able to have the opportunity that if we can pay for it in 21, 22, and it meets the criteria, we want to be able to do that because we have the revenues there. And so that's really why we're asking for this extension.
So in these situations, the expenditures have occurred, right? So we fed all the kids. So we code those expenditures over then to food service. So the costs are already there. But what happens is those current costs in the food service, because they weren't budgeted to be there, it's borrowing from all these other pots right now. We want to balance that through our year-end process to just make sure that our costs are where we need them to be. And being really, really close to that threshold makes finance individuals really nervous because you want to make sure that everything's in the proper year and the proper pot. So this just gives us that movement ability to put the expense capacity where it should be, which is in that food service area, so it stops borrowing from all of our other pots.
Ultimately, we were projecting, with our original plan, we were projecting that our ending fund balance was going to come in right around $8.8 million. With this additional revenue, even though we're increasing our fund balance or our expenditure capacity, we're still going to come in right around $13 million, which is what we were anticipating when you adopted the budget for 22-23. And so this basically, the additional revenue is really taking away, it's not taking as much out of fund balance, and it's actually giving us more capacity in fund balance than we had originally planned. So basically, we're asking for a little bit more capacity for expenditures, but we're also recognizing the revenues, knowing that it's going to increase our fund balance for next year, starting next year. So, because we are doing this as a budget extension, we have to do another public hearing, open up for public hearing, and then we have a resolution 2204 that will allow us to extend the general fund budget by $1.4 million.
Thank you both. So again, we have no comments written on cards regarding the budget resolution, but I would like to ask if there is anyone who would like to comment on this, and if you would please come to the podium. Again, do we have any comments on the 21-22 budget extension? And third time, any comments on the 21-22 budget extension? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have any discussion on the resolution prior to the vote? Do we have a motion to approve the extension?
I make a motion that we approve Resolution 22-04, 21-22 budget extension.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved by David, seconded by Chuck to approve Resolution 2204. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion's carried. Resolution 2204 has been approved. Thank you both for all your work on that. And I also want to note, before we go to our superintendent's report, Board Vice President Natalie Wimberly was not able to be here tonight, and she was also unable to call in. She was, as was mentioned, we've had two lengthy presentations already on both of these, the resolution and both resolutions. And Natalie was fully in support of and wanted to vote tonight, but was unable to do so. So I just wanted to mention that. All right, superintendent's report.
All right. Chuck, I did want to address, you asked a question out loud, and so James Cantonwine reported that of the 41 students that left in the spring of 22, out of 41, only 15 students had no identification as to where they went. 5 confirmed transfers out of Washington State. 3 of those students were confirmed transfers within the state. 14 were confirmed transfers to a private or homeschool. 4 students and family. 4 students were student and family reported but unconfirmed. Parents can report that, but if we can't confirm it with the other institution. 7 students were involuntarily withdrawn due to non-attendance, and 8 students were unknown. So and James is happy to disaggregate that. He did not say exactly which school and which program, but he is happy to do that. So you'll find that in your email that I sent earlier today. I want to go quickly because I know that families are really busy this time of year, but I just have to say we are open for business next week. This is the most normal year, masks optional. We have had a wonderful several weeks. Administrators have been in training and professional development, building relationships and planning for the year. We had our all hands kickoff on Tuesday. I want to thank the board for attending. I want to thank Hugh McMillan was there and gave his award to Ann Nesbitt at KP Fire Department. That was wonderful. As it was, we have heard that people liked it. So the bar is high for next year, but the most fun for those of you that could not attend is that the students from Gig Harbor and Peninsula High School were my teammates, and they ran everything, and it was really, really fun. The funniest was the musical chairs, because the adults played to win. So it was really fun. I want to thank our partners in learning. We had over 30 partners in learning at Peninsula High School. It was the first time in 3 years, so it was wonderful. We had ice cream. Aren't you feeling stronger now? You guys were scooping. And Subway and food and banks and all kinds of organizations. So we look forward to growing that. So if you're sitting at home right now or in the audience and you want to be part of that, I know Gig Harbor Chamber would love to have you as part of that. We had Katie Novak, who is an internationally known UDL, which is Understanding. Yes, it is universally designed. I think Superintendent Barr needs to go home herself. We had a wonderful time. She and her husband, we got to entertain them last evening, and she just said what a beautiful community, and had time with both secondary and elementary teachers. So we're really looking forward to the inclusionary practice work. And the teachers were really excited about how to put that into their classroom. So I want to thank everyone for planning that. Also, the transportation staff, they were packed in here yesterday and today, and boy, they are fun people. So I just wanted to highlight that. All of our content specific, our teachers, our staff, our counselors, our resource, our librarians, our office staff, our nurses, they have all been on site and they are working together. So we are really looking forward to opening our doors. I know Patrick is not here because facilities, our 2 middle school remodels are happening places. And so we look forward to opening the doors, and I'm sure Patrick's hair might fall out. He might be bald next time he comes. But they are working very hard. We'd like to thank all the contractors that are making it happen for kids so that we can open the doors. So we will see you all next week, and we welcome you back. Remember, if you're going to volunteer, get your paperwork in. If you're going to substitute, get your paperwork in. We are open for business. Thanks.
Thank you. Any board discussion and comments?
Madam President, I would just say, on the WASDA resolutions, I'm on the WASDA Resolutions Committee. Our legislative annual conference is next month, so I asked Tanya to print out the legislative handbook. This has, as typical, has all the policies that we've been discussing over the past year. If y'all can take a look, I'll send an email out next week and ask you, give you a little guidance on what I need from you. Thank you.
Just a quick update from me. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to participate in the OSPI Capital Projects TAC Zoom, and the TAC stands for the Technical Advisory Committee. And it was really timely because that came right on the heels of our presentation on safety and security, and that was the topic of that meeting as well. And so it was a really interesting conversation presented by a few school architects and landscape architects talking about facility design and the supporting safety and security. And one thing I just wanted to, two things really stood out to me. One was the emphasis on the idea of when you're talking about layers of security, the number one thing that they were all referring to from practice, not just in school design, but some of these practitioners do other high security facilities as well. But it's the community and relationships that is the number one thing that is going to make a facility secure. And they also talked about that there's a difference between what security is and what safety is. And one is a state of being and a feeling that the people who are members of that community have, and the other talks more about the sort of hard armoring that I think, sometimes the conversation tends to focus on that, but then when you think about safety, that it is a very conceptually different topic. And so the analogy was made that, for example, in a prison, you have a high degree of security, but you do not have a lot of safety if you are like that. So it's just a lot to think about. It was a really interesting presentation. I think it's going to be up on the website. I'll forward it to people if you want to check it out. And then, of course, there was the shop talk about construction costs and escalation and lead times and stabilization and code impacts. And I'm going to let Patrick Gillespie let the board update us on the upcoming changes to energy code for existing buildings that's going to be coming down the pike that's going to be affecting our district. So yeah, buckle up. But other than that, back to the idea of community relationships, going to Peninsula High School for Seahawk 101 was really great. I got to see my kid's babysitter there. She's coming in as a freshman. It was so cool. And, we got Harbor Ridge tomorrow, had Purdy tonight, and I know all of our schools are starting their welcoming back, and it's a really fun time of the year. Even as much as I hate to see summer come to an end, it's pretty sweet to see friends and family and teachers again. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Chuck?
I guess it's always a concern to me when we got a kid that goes 12 years through school and then doesn't graduate at the end. So even if there were only 15 kids that we lost, that's still too many in my mind, and I just want to make sure that we make every effort to contact them, to do what we can to get that last bit so they can go through. I have a young man that's working for me that his story was he got about halfway through his senior year and he was just missing too many credits, and he just went out and got a job and he was done. He didn't value the graduation at all, and so I've encouraged him multiple times to go back and try and get that, but I hate to see that when you go through life. That high school diploma means so much in so many situations, and so anything we can do to reach out to those kids that we've lost, especially during this time following COVID, where some of those kids lost credits and lost interest. So I just want to pass that on, that I hope we do everything we can.
Thank you. Just quickly, the welcome back event was fantastic. It was, as you mentioned, it was great for us to attend. But to my knowledge, the first time all of the employees have been all together in one event, correct? And it was outside for those who weren't there. It was a beautiful day. It was fun. It was festive, tons of energy. And the best part, as you already mentioned, was the students ran the whole thing. And they are the ASB presidents, co-presidents of the two comprehensive high schools, but they did a fantastic job. You could have heard a pin drop when they addressed the staff and talked about the values that are in the strategic plan and how the staff could help with those values and the ways the staff has helped with those values along their path, because they are all seniors. And it was fantastic, and it was silent. Everyone was glued to them. So that was amazing. There were bubbles, which also was amazing. I have to mention. I loved seeing that we have such a fantastic staff in every department. And the thing that struck me is the mix of several brand new employees or brand new to the PSD, mixed with some very seasoned staff people. And it's just a fantastic and perfect mix of all years of service and all together cheering and going crazy for their schools. And it was just the energy. And I think everybody left just feeling really excited for the year that's ahead. On top of that, I had a chance to pop into when Katie Novak was addressing the principals, I think, that day. And just wanted to comment that bringing in an outside speaker like that, these things cost money, obviously. And it was fun to see and just to, what I already knew, but to observe over again how valuable that is. I think to get an outside perspective from a person who is nationally recognized and who just brings their own expertise and just their different perspective. It's always good so that was an awesome event.
And we wrote grants for that speaker, so that was intentional, and that is thanks to all of the people that are sitting out there. So and Katie is working with very few, I want to say 2 other school districts in the state of Washington, and she regaled us with stories of her working with Japan, Dubai. I mean, she's working with people all over the world. And so anyway, we are very, very fortunate to have her all year.
Awesome. And lastly, but very importantly, I would like to say, as the president of the board, that our job last year, well, we just did tonight one of the most important things we do, which was approve the budget. The other most important thing we do is to hire a superintendent, and you just finished your first year, July 1st. And I just want to say, I was thinking about this again at the Welcome Back event, that as the president of the board, I could not be more pleased with just what you have brought, the energy, the high bar you've set, the drive that you have shown to achieve it, and just the whole culture that you're bringing. And it's a process, and we're not there yet, but we're heading in the right direction, and just very, very pleased and very grateful to have you here. And I did hear you say with my own ears at this event to the whole crowd, I'm staying as long as they'll let me. She did say that. So thank you very much. And that's it. We're going to adjourn 7:13. Thanks for coming.